I felt like my entire life, my entire adult life, I was running away from my religion because I felt like it was controlling me too much and I didn't have a say in my fate. And now I'm surrounded by friends who are super spiritual and they want to learn about Hinduism. They have the pattern app, the co-star app, and they're like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I had the coaster and
I
pattern.
know. And I'm just like, I'm confronted. I was like, okay, the thing that I've been running away my entire life, I'm surrounded by it now.
Real people, real stories, and real challenges that break the status quo. I'm your host, Zivile, and welcome to Perception Paradox. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Perception Paradox. And today I have with me this wonderful woman, Vinthujah Bala, who is a founder at Startup Playground. She is building validated MVPs and scaling product development. And she's doing quite a bunch of cool stuff. We've got connected through a shared friend of ours. I was in Amsterdam in the conference and she was like, hey, you have to talk to her. She is so cool. And I'm like, okay, I mean, if you're saying that, I will. So here we are today. After our intro conversation, decided that we would like to talk more. So, Vinthujah, welcome to Perception Paradox.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so careful pronouncing your name because it's such a beautiful name and so complicated. Where is it coming from?
It's actually a name from Sanskrit. So I'm Sri Lankan, and often the languages that are there are derived from Sanskrit, which I know Lithuanian is also
Uh-huh.
derived from Sanskrit. It means knowledge, and my brother actually named me when he was 10 years old.
No way. So you were named by your brother?
Yeah,
That
I
is
don't know.
so
What a
special.
big responsibility they gave to a kid.
Yeah, it is. So we're now here exploring your Sanskrit and beautiful name and origin. So what's your story actually?
Oh
How did you
wow.
end up in Amsterdam in the Netherlands?
Um, I everyone thinks I came to the Netherlands for work or love or something, but
Hmm?
I fell in love with the city.
With
And
Amsterdam?
yeah, and I could see myself living here in the long term. And I think for my age and where I'm at in my life, it's just the perfect place. And then, so let's rewind a bit. I've always had this fascination with Europe. Always wanted to move here. So at the age of 24, I actually did my master's in Brussels. And that was a pretty big deal because a young Sri Lankan girl who's unmarried isn't really allowed to leave the house unless she was, getting married and moving to her
Wow.
husband's. Yeah, so I broke a lot of rules. I saved up a lot of money and I told my parents, hey, I'm going to go live in Brussels and I'm going to do my master's program there. And the house was like wild, but eventually they supported me and I went to Brussels. I studied my Master's of Science in International Business Economics and Management at the KU Leuven Brussels campus. I fell in love with the city there as well, and I always knew that I would come back to Europe. Fast forward 3 years, I gave myself a deadline. I said, okay, build your career in Canada, and then when you're in the industry you love, the role that you have, and then try to come back to Europe and figure out if you still want it. So my deadline came August 2021. I was working as a mobile product manager for a health tech company in Montreal, and I was like, what do I do? And at the same time, COVID was kind of still a thing. And I asked my director, hey, can I go live in Amsterdam for 6 weeks? And I was in such a critical role in the company, and I had a lot of trust from my team that he said yes. So flew to Amsterdam, pretended like I lived there. I also sold everything in my apartment in Montreal and didn't renew the lease, registered at my parents' house. So yeah, and I went to Amsterdam and I really pretended I lived here. I had my gym membership,
Yeah.
I made friends, I went partying, I just really explored and pretended like I was an Amsterdamer. And I came back to Montreal and I felt like I woke up from a dream and I was like, this is it. I still want to be in Europe and I think Amsterdam is the perfect place for me. I from then I just moved back and forth. I would spend 2 months in Amsterdam, 2 months with my parents helping them out, fly back to Amsterdam, build my network here, meet people, go to events, go back to Canada, apply for jobs here. It's just flying back and forth and then around April, a startup reached out to me asking me if I would work for them as a senior product manager. took the job and I permanently moved here for like that year. I got they expedited my highly skilled migrant visa, so I got it in like 2 weeks. It was crazy. And then yeah, I came to a point where they didn't renew my contract. And so I had to decide, do I get another company to sponsor me or do I register my own business and have my own visa? Because then I would have the control in my hand and I'm not at the mercy of another company who could. And that climate and the economy was pretty bad. So everyone was like being laid off. If I got laid off, I would have to leave the country.
Yeah.
So I registered my business and then it just kind of, you know, when you're trying to force something and it doesn't happen, and then other times it's like a current is pulling you and opportunities kept coming up and I was surrounded by the right people and it just feels like the momentum right now for what we're building is here.
This is so great. And I'm like, now I'm into this stagnation. Okay, I want to ask the questions from the past, and I want to ask about what you're building, and the moment is here. But let's still go a bit back, a bit back about you and your bold decisions. You grew up in Canada, right?
I grew up in Canada, yeah. I was
Okay.
born in Sri Lanka. We
Yeah.
left when I was 4 years old because the Civil War was really, striking the country in a really negative way. And my family and I moved to Canada, and most of my childhood memories are from there.
Okay. So talking about you going against your cultural kind of heritage in a way, how should a woman behave? Where did you get this courage? Was it because you grew up in such a Western Canadian environment, or where was your kind of, I don't know, this kind of resilience and inner strength was coming from?
I honestly, I have no idea to think about this because I lived in such a tricky and really complex environment where domestically and at home, it was very traditional. You know, I'm the youngest in the family. I'm the only daughter. So there's a lot of rules where, you know, you have to be obedient, you have to be well behaved, you can't talk out of turn, you have to be a little bit more submissive and passive. And those were my expectations at home. And then my expectations outside of the home, it was all like, you need to be outspoken, you need to communicate, you need to go after what you want. And I felt these two personalities were always in conflict with each other. I really struggled. Like I think I went to therapy a couple of years just to be, you know, try to figure out who am I and what part of me is actually the real part of me. But at the same time, I had a mother who was also very strong. There's so many things that she wanted to achieve, but because of the culture, she couldn't. So she wanted to go to school, she wanted to be a lawyer, she was really outspoken as well, but it feels like society and the expectations of women also kind of pull you back a bit. And my mother is always like, yeah, I want you to be smarter than all the boys. I want you to be like Condoleezza Rice. And at that time when I was a kid, Condoleezza Rice was the United States Secretary General. And she would see her on TV and be like, yes, that's going to be my daughter someday. So I'm like, you want me to be bold and ambitious and be this influential, but then I'm like in the confines of a really traditional environment. Those things aren't possible. But I've also was really struggling because I wanted to fit in with the rest of my friends and my campus and my other environment. So naturally, I think I tried to break out of that. And for me, there was something so there's like you know when you have a fire inside of you and you don't really explain where it's coming from, you just need to follow it. And so that's kind of what I did. And I used to be the girl that wasn't allowed to go to sleepovers. I wasn't allowed to leave the house after 8 p.m. And this is when I was like 20 years old. This is not when I was like 12. And then suddenly I got all this boldness where I was like, it's now or never. I need to break out of this. I need to follow my dreams. So I don't know where I got the audacity, but I told them, hey, I saved up $20,000. I'm going to move to Brussels to do my master's program. I would love if you can support me, but if you can't, I already saved the money. So I'm going to hop on a flight and go abroad to do my program. And that just, yeah, that's how it happened.
That is so strong. I'm so glad. And then you ended up having a good relationship with your family anyway, right?
I broke down all these boundaries that they thought was going to limit me and protect me. But in the end, they became so proud. They tell all their friends, yeah, my daughter studied at this amazing school and now she's doing this. She was by this newspaper interviewed her. Like, it's just funny how things turned out.
And how was it for you to move to Belgium after having such a strict routine in your family and being
Um,
quite limited on how
yeah,
much you can express yourself? Really, how was it for you?
I felt like it was the first time in my life that I had the space to really explore who I am. Because there was a whole process of unlearning that happened. The like, what were my values? What weren't my values? My mother actually came with me for a month, and she was like, she loved it. She was on vacation for a month, and I'm here like trying to study and make friends. And I also had a panic attack because it was the first time in my life I was going to live alone. I didn't really
Hmm.
think about what that actually meant until I was there. So, but I remember speaking to my brothers, and they said, what how are you going to feel about this, right? If you come back home, how will you feel? Will you feel proud of yourself? And my cousins asked me the same thing, and I knew I would regret it. And as I started like being immersed in my campus and meeting the other students, I started doing a lot better. And you know, when you start something and you feel scared and you dread it, like, oh my god, how am I going to last 2 years alone in this new country by myself? And then you start loving it, and suddenly you it's like you blink and it's over. And it was like the most amazing time of your life. Like, I think I did a lot of growing when I lived there by myself.
That is so great to hear. And then, okay, so you were growing, and did you have any expectations from your environment, what you should study or whom you should become?
Oh my God, girl. My mother and my father had my whole life planned out for me.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a little bit of like a background on our religion. So in Hinduism and in our culture, when you're
Mm-hmm.
born, you have a chart made out for you, a birth
Mm.
chart. And based on where the planets were all, it tells you exactly what you should be, where you're going to live, and it's basically trying to predict your future based on Vedic astrology. And then, of course, with cultural values and expectations, my parents thought the perfect job for me would be a doctor, as most South Asian kids, right?
Not only
But
South Asian,
yeah, and
AC
like,
region, same.
yeah, so I don't know, parents love their kids to become doctors, but for me, they specifically wanted me to be a pediatrician, just to work with children, not like the heavy duty like surgeons or
Okay.
anything. So they really thought I was going to be that, and they had this rule, or they wanted someone in the family to become a doctor. It came down to me or one of my other brothers. Luckily, he became the doctor in the
Oh,
family.
okay. So the pressure was gone from you
Yeah,
becoming
but
the
at the same
doctor.
time, because I decided I was going to go to law school, and I was like, no, I'm going to study law.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was a little stubborn to be honest, but I studied law for 4 years
Yeah.
as an undergraduate degree, and then I decided to pursue business instead. But
How did business? Yeah.
yeah,
How did business come into your life?
um, I think I have so many different interests, so it wasn't just business. So when I'm stressed out and I feel like my back is against the wall, I
Mm-hmm.
create all these contingency plans and I put everything into motion. So when I was back in Ottawa, that's where our family house is. I was having a hard time getting into law school in Canada, and it's super competitive. So I realized, okay, next year something needs to happen. I'm going to do a master's somewhere, a law degree somewhere, or get the kind of job that I want. So it was between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for Canada. I was already
Okay.
working in the government. Um, it was a master's of international business economics or international relations, human rights, and I just applied to like Finland, France, England, the Netherlands, Belgium, and then I applied for a bunch of jobs. And I said, okay, well, and my parents wanted me to also try law school again, do the exams, apply, whatever. And so I also applied to like 3 law schools in Canada. And I said, okay, guys, whatever happens this fall, whatever one thing that I receive, I'm taking it. To make things fair, I did apply for law school like you asked me as well, but I also applied for this master's in business in Brussels. And I got into programs in England, but it was so expensive that I would have to pay for using my organs or something. It was insanely expensive. So I couldn't do that because this wasn't realistic. I didn't get into law school in Canada. I didn't get into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs either, but I got into this really good school in Brussels. And I was like, okay, well, that was fate, you know? I put all my contingency plans out there. This happened. There is no way I'm staying in the same place doing the same thing. And
Uh,
then I jumped.
that sounds like a really big jump.
It was a terrifying jump, but it was the most rewarding one.
I'm so glad to hear that. And that's how business came into your life. So What you mentioned before about you moved to Amsterdam with the company and with the contract, and then instead of relying on someone else about your dream life and about extending your visa, and I have friends from outside Europe who are always on the needles because of the visa situation. That's it, and it's so stressful, especially if someone fires or someone closes the company.
Yeah.
So how was it for you? How did you come up with your business idea? Is it the startup playground that you
Yeah.
decided to create?
Yeah. So Startup Playground is incorporated in Canada as well. So
Mm-hmm.
when I got into tech, the reason why I got into tech is because it was really for selfish reasons. I wanted to learn how to build my own tech company, try to
Okay.
do it, had no idea what I was doing. And my brothers, who are engineers, told me, hey, what you're actually doing is product management. Maybe you want to look for a career in that. And I was like, okay, let me go research and apply. And I had a company that reached out to me in Montreal like a year after I did a review, an interview, and they said, hey, I know this role is not what you want, but this startup is high growth, and when someone offers you a seat on a rocket ship, what do you say? And I'm like, oh fuck, Sheryl Sandberg's quote. Of course, I'm gonna say yes. So I said yes, and I went to Montreal to the startup, and I actually started in HR. And
Okay.
I don't know, I have some background in it, but it's not really what I wanted. But I had a deal with the director that he said if I take this role for 3 months, he'll get me a mentor in product. He'll give me the textbooks that I can read up to learn about this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And in 3 months from then, he'll let me interview with the product team again.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, done. I'm going to take it. And luckily, I had a business case I had to do at the end of 3 months, and I passed. And they were like, wow, we're so pleasantly surprised how good you are. And I'm like, yeah. And then that's how my career started there.
That is so cool. And because that's what we Startup Playground, right? You do a lot of things with the
So
product development cycles and
that's where I started. And
uh-huh.
I'm still thinking, this is like a walk down memory lane.
Let's do it. Let's do
So,
it. I like memory
yeah.
lanes.
So I came in for selfish reasons. I wanted to learn how to build tech. I
Uh-huh.
got into tech. I got into this organization, and I love this company so much. But when I went inside, what I saw was that all the talent and the diversity was concentrated at the bottom.
Mm.
And that made me really sad. I would be in meeting rooms where I know the women there are so intelligent, but they're not speaking up. And so I had like, what do I do about this? And then I also thought about entrepreneurship. Okay, so if this is how it looks like in a tech company, how does it look like for entrepreneurship and investment for women and women in me, like me, an immigrant. I have a really interesting name. I'm Canadian, but I moved there when I was 4 years old, and I'm a woman of color. So I looked at statistics, and I think it's like 0.00 something percent that a woman of color gets investment, and I'm like, oh fuck,
It's really bad.
this does not look good. So how do I wanted to help change the problem. So when I'm going to be in that stage, I would have, made it better for myself and all the other women. And I thought, what can I do to make this possible? So as soon as I got into tech, I started sharing everything that I'd learned. So Startup Playground came as like a knowledge sharing hub.
Wow. Okay.
It wasn't an actual business. It was just me wanting to share knowledge about tech and how I can help other women build products with their unique perspectives. Because I thought, if someone with a unique perspective and a unique background that comes from a different place, if they use that perspective to build something, they're going to be helping their community, right? And I really believe in inclusively impactful innovation. So it doesn't matter if maybe you have diversity in your company, but if that inclusivity is not embedded into the product that you're building, the impact is not going to be inclusive. And that's what happened with Startup Playground. I spoke to a lot of girls in student clubs who wanted to join tech and trying to like create that because there's a huge gap. Women and girls weren't going into tech. And I did takeovers on Instagram and online where I would take over like an Instagram account and they'll ask me to speak to their audience. I think I like over like 50 women reached out to me after one talk, and I got this huge engagement rate. Yeah, I used the concept of an MVP, like a minimal viable product, and I applied it to myself, like as a person.
Yeah.
And that really resonated with a lot of women because I said, it's okay to have imposter syndrome, but think about it as an MVP. So yes, I'm not an expert, but I have the minimum like capability to get going. And as I go and I learn, I'm going to get better over time. I'm going to iterate on myself. So you're kind of like your own MVP. And that really resonated with a lot of women. And I started coaching other women, how they can develop their careers. But the end goal was that I really wanted to create like an accelerator or something that I can teach women to build out products. And I really believe, because tech is the next wave of generational wealth, there's a lot of power in tech.
Mm-hmm.
And if all the power is not equally distributed, it doesn't really create a just world. So fast forward a couple of years, now I'm in the Netherlands and I needed a business to register. And I was like, obviously, I'm going to register Startup Playground. And it just kind of took off.
This is so cool. And so you started working full time on it when you left your final official employer?
Yeah, so that was a startup here in the Netherlands. When that contract ended, I was thinking, what do I do? So I wasn't like it wasn't full out building Startup Playground alone, because to be honest, entrepreneurship life, when you don't come from a wealthy background, you can't just drop everything and focus on a company. I had to think, how do I make money at the same time under this registered name in the Netherlands? So I did a fractional chief product officer role for a startup in stealth mode. So he was like my paying client, but in my free time, outside of his hours, I'm building the brand and the company and helping other clients.
That's incredible. And how is it going right now? So how far did you move already with this whole concept and product behind?
So I think the first year was all about brand awareness and recognition and building trust in the ecosystem. At first, I had like these big ambitious plans, but they were a bit too ambitious, to be honest.
That's what happens with the visionaries.
Yeah. So, but instead, what I wanted to happen didn't happen, but the things that happened were a lot better than I could even expect it to be. So I got a lot of like recognition. I did a lot of speaking events where I was with really established communities. I did a talk for Microsoft Startup Founders Hub. Harper's Bazaar reached out to me and they wanted me to do a talk called Thought Leaders in Tech. And that I was like, how did you find me? Like, this is, it was like a really out of body experience to have these women in these high positions recognize you and wanting you to share your knowledge with their community. And this is like, there's something there, right? This is the type of validation that there's a need and you're able to solve this need. I have another event coming up where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is hosting a delegation of women entrepreneurs from the MENA region, so Middle East and North Africa. And my facilitator asked me if I would speak with them to help them figure out how can tech accelerate what they're doing. And this is when I started disassociating, because this is big.
Yeah, it is.
To be able to partner with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the Dutch government and help a delegation, like, so all these amazing things are happening. And I stopped thinking about making profit and making revenue and focusing on impact. I'm speaking with VC firms that really care about impact and really care about diversity. How do I help their portfolio companies? How do I partner with this other accelerator? How do I help the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and internationally? So this is how it's been going so far. And we do have clients. We do have paying clients, and of which one of them I love so much. And they created a community of entrepreneurial and creative women to help them in their professional growth and development. And they've tested out the demand. There's definitely a fit, a demand from the market. And now we're trying to figure out how do we scale this into a tech platform and help women internationally. We're their full out tech partner to make this dream a reality and then help them with the funding round.
That's pretty cool. So did I understand it correct? So you're helping with the tech part, or let's say I'm coming as a client. What kind of client would I be to work with Startup Playground, and how we could work together?
Okay, so Startup Playground, we try to tack the product development cycle and then try to cater it to the different clients' needs. So for example, you might already have a startup that's up and running, but you don't have the talent that's needed to build AI. So Startup Playground partners with engineering firms based in Sri Lanka, my home country.
Mm.
I always want to give back to my country, and I think the best way to do that is through international trade. And so we partner, and if you needed the engineers, we can embed those engineers into your team, and they help you build out this product. And we focus on long-term relationships. It's not like we come in and we leave, and you're not sustainable anymore. We're embedded and we're committed to the long term. And then on the other side, because of my background is in product management, I can help with the product discovery and ideation. So this client already has a sustainable business. They're already making money. They're already profitable with no investment. And now we're going through a product. We actually just finished product discovery. So we did a lot of user research, market research, competitive analysis, speaking to their own community members to identify what do they really need and how can we use tech to give it to them and scale it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and so we know what's on the product roadmap, and the team is like executing front, right, and center about like, when you're an MVP is not actually the first step. It's a manual viable product, not a minimum viable product. So everything on your roadmap, you potentially can create a manual version of it just to test the demand. And so the team has been executing on all the manual versions of the features on the roadmap. So I'm leading them with that, and they execute while I give the direction.
And yourself being a female founder in a foreign country, a foreign continent, what were so far the major challenges that you had to face as an entrepreneur building something? It was not from scratch, but it's kind of opening up a new branch in a new country, which is completely no brand, fully brand awareness or anything.
It's definitely challenging, and I am lucky because the Dutch government has this visa called a startup visa, and so there's a startup visa program, and they require you to have a facilitator. And a facilitator is a recognized institution by the Dutch government that is experienced in guiding entrepreneurs. I have an amazing facilitator. Her name is Jenny, and she is part of the Next Web. And so,
Cool.
TNW, we were there for the conference. So TNW,
that's why I was in Amsterdam. I had some work to do there.
Exactly. She's basically my professional babysitter, making sure that I'm going down the right path.
Beautiful.
And she's the one that helped me a lot with, like, if I get really stuck, I run to her.
Okay.
I have and then little things like I get a letter from the tax office, the Belastingdienst, and that's a scary envelope to get. Yes. And I'm like, what do I need? And I know I screwed up my VAT filings. So, and everything is in Dutch, and I call the phone and everything is also in Dutch. The automated voice messaging is all Dutch. So obviously these little things add up and it's stressful. But my strategy for increasing brand awareness, it wasn't to do like a mass marketing attempt. It was to do organic and community involvement. So I looked for the communities that I resonated with, and I just introduced myself, and I started hanging out in those spaces, meeting people there, asking like, how can I help you? And that's basically also how I got that opportunity with Harper's Bazaar. I reached out to them. I made a list of all the communities that I was interested in, and I sent them a message. Hi, my name is Vinthujah. I built Startup Playground. This is what I really want to do. Can I help out your community in any way? And this is kind of the things that I foresee that could be of help. And then they would respond, they wouldn't respond. And when they respond, you find the people that really are aligned with your mission, and they help accelerate you.
That's a very important point you are mentioning, that sometimes we tend to wait for things to come to us or opportunities to show up rather than actually putting ourselves out there and just asking. Yeah. And that's a very big difference from you waiting, from being very proactive and putting it out there. So that's really cool that you are doing that.
Thank you.
One more question for you about entrepreneurship and mindset, I would say. I mean, entrepreneurship is very uncertain. It's a lot of risks involved. You're basically putting all stakes and not in one basket, but it's never certain. 1 month is really great, another month is like, what am I doing with it?
Or the highs and lows happen at the exact same time.
It's the roller coaster. So how did you learn to deal with those uncertainties and to cope with it, actually? Because it can really affect our mental health.
Yeah, I'm still learning. Like, I haven't figured it out yet. But what I find helps me the most is to process things as quickly as possible rather than trying to like avoid it. Movement helps a lot. Go to the gym, having a support system, talking to my friends. I have a really good team around me. So Oreya is actually on my team.
Amazing.
Yeah, so she feeds me from time to time, and she's always there. It's like little things for my friends help me out. They talk to
Yeah.
me, they feed me, they give me an ear, they go to the gym with me, and oftentimes I have other co-founders that sit with me and we work together. So it's like you feel motivated and supported, even though you're working on your separate things.
Yeah.
I had a startup that got sued, and this is startup life, right? I got a startup customer that got sued and ended a
Yeah.
contract of mine. And that gave me so much stress because you know entrepreneurship is hard. You know it's a roller coaster, but you don't really know it until you're in it, like the severity of it, and you don't know what the financial burden is because we're bootstrapped. We don't have any investment either, right? And to be able to scramble and to figure out how am I going to support myself while building this company. I have friends who lent me money. I have my business partner who is also the business partner of another company. So she was able to lend me money as well when I needed it. So she was like, you know what? I can commit to giving you X amount per month, focus on building the company. So I just had really good people around me, but this is it. I have so many people that look at my social media and they say, wow, you look like you're doing great and everything's amazing and you're like being so badass. And I'm like, yeah, I'm struggling. There's a lot of struggles that you don't see, and I'm always honest about that. But yeah, being honest, processing things, adding movement, and having a good support system around you is really helping. And I just accepted that this is entrepreneurship. There's no shortcut to success. You're going to have to go through the dirt and the trenches and go through this process of becoming, and then you'll eventually get there, but there's no way to avoid it. You have to go through the mess.
Oh yeah, for this washing machine that repeats the cycles itself. Oh my God, during all this years, so now, okay, so you started out with this all the startup playground, with the seeing the need to speak up and to show your experience about different opportunities for women and trying to embrace this whole equality and change the narrative in the tech scene. Have you noticed any change or growth during these years?
In myself or in other women?
I would say overall in our society and equality.
Yeah. I think I still have a small amount of like sampling data to give a proper picture, but being in the space, I the challenges are still there, but the awareness is increasing. And when I have these one-on-one conversations with senior partners of a VC firm, and I can openly talk to them about these issues and they're receptive, that's something that I'd never thought would be easy. Like, I was terrified to have this conversation. I was terrified to speak to the investment world because I thought, the odds are against us. Is it going to change? But having someone on the other end from that world receive your message and, align with it, that was like eye-opening for me. It was like, okay, I'm supported. If I collaborate with them, we're at the opportunity to actually change the narrative together and not me alone and them alone. It's joining forces, so that having that kind of validation, having the editors of chief in these internationally known magazines step in and be like, how do I help you? What can I do? And I'm like, women need money. Women need money to build their companies. They need funding. Funding world does not look so great. And they're like, okay, how do I connect you? Let me connect you to this place and this place. So there's action happening. And that for me signals, more of a positive and a brighter future. Statistic wise, I don't know what the change is, but qualitatively, in my own personal experience, I'm meeting people who are in positions of power that are pushing this forward.
Really like hearing that. That's what also I've noticed since I don't know, since all those initial reports that started going out during the COVID times and about the even in the Nordic countries where the equality seems to be quite decent, but there was such a low numbers of investments that go to the women founders. So great to see that it is. I do believe it is changing, but it will still take a lot of time.
Yeah.
But yourself, as being a founder, entrepreneur, and all this kind of very much building stage, what makes you jump out of bed every day?
What do you jump out of bed every day?
Yeah, what makes you jump out of bed and start the day? We had only 2 conversations with you, but it always seems like you have this mindset with a smile, approaching things and problems, literally like in the playground.
I think, yeah. I'll tell you the story why I call it playground after.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Okay.
there's two things. It's the impact, the people that I want to help, and then it's my family,
Mm.
right? So we come from a war-torn country where there was a lack of opportunity. It was dangerous to actually live there. And my parents took such a big risk leaving that country, going to a new country, starting completely new from scratch, that I felt like they took the biggest risk of all. And I want to be able to give them a life where, it was all worth it. So I cannot settle for mediocrity. I need to take what I have and move forward as quickly as possible and like achieve so much that, gives back. And at the same time, I don't, yeah, I care so much about people and I care a lot about the underdogs. And the underdogs are the people that are underestimated and they
Mm-hmm.
don't get the opportunities that they deserve. So I have women reach out to me of all the struggles that they're going through. And so I'm all the women right now that I know that are building startups are in like their late 20s, still mid 30s, early 40s. And this coincides with the time that a woman, if you want to get married, you get married around this time. You have babies around this
Oh yeah.
time. You're raising your kids. And at the same time, you're at the height of your career. And these two things are conflicting. And it breaks my heart to think that a woman has to be afraid to go in front of investors or customers being pregnant or raising her kids and having to choose between two, where worrying she has to be, is she going to be seen as a bad mother, a bad entrepreneur? Why do we have to choose? And I think we need to change the way that we're thinking and change the systems. How do we support women that are going through these natural life stages as well as help them build a company? Like we should be thinking like that, not expecting them to fail.
Yeah. I've seen I don't know if you follow Female Invest, that
Yeah.
they just came out with this public post. Okay, so we were raising while expecting another baby in our
Yeah.
co-founders' families. And I was like, I'm so glad that you're talking about that and breaking the
Yeah.
stereotypes. But still, they had to hide.
They
And
had to.
that's bullshit.
It's awful.
It's
I
really
actually
awful.
joined their webinar where they talked about, hey guys, this is how we raised and this is our
Mm-hmm.
experience. And they were so brutally honest
Mm-hmm.
that you're like, thank you for being honest, because there's a lot of people that write posts about this is how you need to raise, but that's not meant for us. We're not the typical use case of, a woman of color raising, and if she's pregnant, we can't do the same things that a man who's not pregnant, who isn't going to be
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, who's going to be raising funding. Our lived experience is going to be completely different, and people are judging us differently.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
Female Invest
definitely.
got very real about their experience and shared it with the women that joined the webinar.
Yeah. There's one more question, right? You mentioned about yourself growing up and having this whole map out, Hindu map with your astrology, what kind of life you should live and defined by some external factors. But we're seeing in the society some kind of awakening of spirituality, of consciousness through different religions. What is your relationship right now with the religion?
So Um, I felt like my entire life, my entire adult life, I was running away from my religion because I felt like it was controlling me too much and I didn't have a say in my fate. And now I'm surrounded by friends who are super spiritual and they want to learn about Hinduism. They have the Pattern app, the Co-Star app, and they're like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah, I had the coaster and
I
pattern.
know. And I'm just like, I'm confronted. I was like, okay, the thing that I've been running away my entire life, I'm surrounded by it now. And I remember my therapist that I went to a couple of years ago said, if I don't truly accept where I come from, I won't be able to accept anyone else. And yeah, so now I'm in this position where I don't tell my mom yet because she's going to be like, oh my God, let's go read your chart together or something. No. So I'm slowly learning about the religion again and with my friends around me, and I'm experiencing traditions. Like I had a Diwali party in my own apartment
Oh
by
wow.
myself, far away
No
from
way.
home. And then all my friends that are around me are they're so open to learning about new cultures. I feel like I'm learning about my own culture with them, and they look at it with these different eyes. And I'm like, oh wow, so maybe it's not so scary. So yeah, in my own pace and time, I'm learning more about my culture and my religion. I used to do Bharatanatyam. It's a ancient temple dance in South Asia, in South India. And I'm like rewatching the videos, learning the steps. And when my friends saw this, they're like, what is this? We want to know. And I told them, yeah, when you study this dance style, at the end of it, you put on a huge performance for all your family and friends, and they're like, yes, go back to it. Go back to learning it. If this is you like doing it, learn it, and we want to be there. We want to be there, sitting there, watching you perform. And when I lived in Canada, I had to hide. I have my Sri Lankan life, and then I have my Western Canadian life, and they never blended. And I felt like the kids back in high school then weren't open to it. Like you're the weird person if you did these like unusual dance styles that they're not used to. If it wasn't ballet, then this is kind of weird. But I'm in a place where I'm around people that are so curious about my identity that they want to explore it. And so I'm exploring my own identity because of all the curiosity around me from my friends.
Do you come back to Sri Lanka time by time?
Yeah, so the very first time I went back to Sri Lanka was around 2012, and that's when the war mostly ended. My brother got married. I went to Colombo, stayed there for 2 weeks. Didn't really experience Sri Lanka. And then this last summer, August 2023, it was the first time in my life I went back to the place that I was born.
How did that feel?
It was insane because my entire life I didn't understand my parents. And I was like, why are you treating me like this? Why are you so strict? Why? And I going back home to the place I was born, and I haven't been back since I was 4 years old.
Wow.
I saw the way the village was, my relatives were, and everything made sense. And I saw the way my mother was being treated by her aunt, and I was like, okay, it all makes sense. I couldn't even walk home alone from the temple to my aunt's house. It was a 5-minute walk. My uncle had to escort me all the way back home. And if I come from a society that's this strict, of course, me being in Canada, wanting to be all out all night and partying with my friends is like a shock to their system.
Yeah, completely different. Did you have any, I don't know, feeling when you were landing in Sri Lanka the first time after coming back since you were 4 years old? Or was it more like curiosity and like, okay, let's see, it's kind of supposed to be interesting?
I think the first time I went when I was like 20 years old, it was just for my brother's wedding in Colombo. I was like, oh, fun, yeah, my brother's gonna get married in Colombo. It was more for like a naive point of view. And then this last summer, I don't know what happened, but I had this intention that I wanted to experience Sri Lanka and my roots with my family. Because I felt like, when will I have a chance again? My parents will get older, and then someday they're not going to be here. And then I don't want to miss out on this chance to really learn where I come from. And yeah, so it was an overwhelming feeling to like really see where you were from and kind of the struggles that people went through as well, because the northern part was heavily bombed. There was a lot of like struggle and poverty up there, but it's such a beautiful place, and to feel like I'm from this paradise is an insane feeling. Like I felt like a part of my identity was always missing because I didn't grow up in the country that I was from. So when you're from two cultures, you feel like you're not Canadian enough and I'm not Sri Lankan enough. But then I needed the other piece to really have a whole picture of, this is part of your roots and this is where you come from.
It's incredible connection and transformation and blending of two worlds. Do you think it helped you, this reconnection with your homeland, to get where you are right now? To become who you are, to kind of grow where you are?
I learned a lot of gratitude. Like I think I'm less of a complainer for sure. Like I've never complained a lot, to be honest, but knowing where you come from and the kind of struggles that people there face, it really changes your perspective on life. When sometimes you're at home and you complain about little things. So why did you leave the toilet seat up?
Mm-hmm.
Or the toilet seat down, and you get annoyed. And then you go to Sri Lanka, and I never knew that sometimes a bathroom is just a hole in the ground. And then you're like, why am I complaining about these silly things that at the end of the day doesn't matter? So I've become more patient, more accepting, more grateful. I see a lot of people on the streets that are so angry. And I'm like, you live in the Netherlands. What are you angry about? You're in such a safe country. There's so much opportunity. You have so much privilege, like so much to be grateful for. And so little things do not like make me angry at all. And I just always think about, yeah, I'm lucky. I'm so lucky. I had a workshop with the founder of Boom Chicago, and he was giving a like kind of like a lecture, and he said how to become successful as an entrepreneur. Number one, be lucky. Be lucky that you were born on the side of the earth, the planet, where you don't have to struggle with war and poverty. And like that's how I really feel. I'm lucky.
Thank you for sharing. So, but tell me now, a bit again, jumping back, because I could not hold it behind playground. So, where is that name coming from?
Okay, I love how you asked that because when you come from these families that come from a background of struggle, of war, of poverty, your parents teach you to take the stable path. And the stable path is a 9 to 5. And 9 to 5 is it's completely okay for some people, right? But if you think taking that is the better route because you're afraid of taking, the path of entrepreneurship, I think the biggest risk is not being able to take the risk. That's the biggest risk. And I recognize that there's this fear of entrepreneurship, a fear of failure, and I wanted to kind of get rid of that. So the playground is supposed to represent an actual playground where, as children, you're playing, you're exploring, you might fall and break something or scrape your knees, but you're going to be around people that are there to support you and pick you back up and keep going. So that's the kind of analogy I have for Startup Playground. Yeah, building a business can be scary, but it can also be fun. But if you're surrounded by the right people, we're going to help you move forward. And so that's where the name Startup Playground comes from.
That makes so much sense, especially when you explain it more in depth. It's a very great name. I immediately heard about that. Okay, because in general, I believe life is a game, but then you bring this also cultural aspect where we are expected to have this linear path, and especially coming from different environments, it's just we need to learn as adults how to play again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
For someone who is listening right now and who is building something or wants to build a company, especially women, but don't find this courage to start, even though you can feel like I have this fire, but I'm scared. What would you say to someone who wants to explore entrepreneurship, but the fear is still strong? And
Honestly, so many things. I think
go ahead.
I've learned the anticipation is a lot scarier than the reality of it. I think you get so scared on the inside, but as soon as you start doing it, you're like, oh, wow, that wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Like, yeah, it is still scary, but not as bad as I thought it would be. So that removing the anticipation of the fear and accepting that reality is a lot better. I tied myself to a greater cause. There were so many times where, well, back in my first tech company, I I knew the women weren't happy. And though there was a mass exodus of female engineers leaving the company, and everyone's trying to figure out what was going on, and the product team wasn't happy. So I also believe that when I speak up, if I don't speak up, I'm setting a lot of other women behind. So one of the things that terrified me, so this is not entrepreneurship, it's just fear in your career. I was getting underpaid, like significantly underpaid. And at the same time, our product leader was doing one-on-ones with everyone on the team to see what's going on, why are they unhappy, and what can I do to help. That was a great exercise. And so, but I was afraid to tell them that you're underpaying me significantly and you need to like raise my salary. But what I told myself is that if I don't do this, if I don't speak up, then everyone else is going to be still behind. So I got on this call and I told him, here's like, it doesn't matter what bonus you give me because I'm already getting severely underpaid. I'm getting underpaid so below market value for this. I'm just trying to get to a playing field of fairness. And fairness looks like increasing my salary by $20,000. That's the difference. And and I just geared myself with all the statistics to make me feel like, you know what, you have a point, speak up. And if you don't speak up, you're going to set all these other women behind as well. So I spoke up. He received it. He was shocked. And the next day, they put it into motion, raised my salary by $15,000. And then the rest of the year, the whole 20, and then they just kept raising it over and over again. I didn't even ask anymore. My director was like, by the way, we're also giving you a raise.
Whoa, that's so powerful.
Yeah, and
Sweet
the only
Jesus.
reason I could do that is I was thinking, if I don't do this, I'm speaking for a lot of women. If I am brave, I'm being brave for a lot of other women as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's very powerful and great to, I'm happy to be talking now with such a leader who is here to actually embrace help to have this equality. And I understand it takes courage. And yeah, so I wish you more courage and more resilience. So no matter what, that you stay true to yourself as well with the things you're trying to achieve and helping so many women around. And final thing, actually, I wanted really to ask you about. I heard that you're also creating a book.
Yeah.
Right? Can you tell us more a bit? Because I feel like it's something very inspirational and practical as well.
Yeah. So when I speak to women one-on-one, I hear these amazing stories and we really connect. And when I look for role models, it always feels like they're so far away from me and that their success story and their path is completely different. It's disconnected for me because, I come from a war-torn country, a family where my parents worked so hard. We didn't have all the opportunity. How do I become something like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs? It just doesn't seem like this path is possible for me. And what I wanted to do is to find women with real stories that are open to going really deep into what their struggles were. And our vision was that, someday a young girl or a woman is going to pick up this book, she'll flip to a page, and she'll find a story in there that resonates with her. And she's going to think, okay, wow, she went through this. I am going through the same shit right now, but I see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. So I can do it too. And the women that we've interviewed over 100 women around the world. And there's stories like one of the startup founders, she was on Dragon's Den. She was throwing up in the bathroom before she was going to pitch. She was terrified. But you don't hear these kind of stories. Or a young girl who spent her childhood cleaning washrooms with her parents because that's the only way for them to, earn a living. She never thought of herself being a successful entrepreneur. I want to find these real stories for real people to connect with and then be honest about your struggles and talk about your success. So everyone knows that it's not a highlight reel.
Yeah, real people, real stories, real challenges. And here we are sitting here now and sharing it live. So thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Oh my God. I think I have way too many thoughts to share with the audience, but this is the first time that I'm doing a podcast.
Woohoo!
Yeah, it's the first time I'm doing a
You're
podcast
great.
episode. And I think I often forget how strong my story is as well. And then you ask these questions, I receive this energy from you. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm on the right path. So I think what I want to tell the audience is that learn how to become a good storyteller and keep sharing your story because a couple of things happen. You're putting yourself out there and you're also getting validation back to yourself that, hey, you're on the right path. Keep going. Regardless of the challenges, you're getting somewhere and your message is being received.
Dropping the mic. Vinthujah, thank you so much for your openness, for being here so present and so transparent about your story. It inspired me and pretty sure inspired others as well. And yeah, now I can see, I've got to know you better and I'm like, oh, this is such a huge female role model. So I don't know, I wish everyone, including you, myself, and all the women out there, not to give up. Let's know our why and let's go for it. Because if you know your why and if you have your support system around you, well, nothing can stop us. So thank you again for being here today at Perception Paradox Finding Time. It was Vinthujah. All of the links will be in this podcast episode description. And have a great day, everyone, whenever you are. And thank you for listening. Thank you.